It is kind of crazy how it takes like an external threat to really unite people. I always joke that like racism isn't going to end until we have aliens, around, because
Right.
then like, oh, we're actually the same. That thing though. Um,
Yeah. Hello, and thank you for joining us for this edition of the One Young World Together Apart series. My name is Noam Shuster Eliassi. I'm a comedian, a peace builder, an activist, and of course, a One Young World ambassador from Israel. I'm so excited and thrilled to be speaking today with actress, producer, filmmaker, writer Anna Akana, whose work has made it big on YouTube, Facebook, Netflix. As a screen actress, you can see her on shows on ABC, Freeform, and Comedy Central, and in films starring alongside the likes of stars like Bella Thorne. I'm personally really waiting to watch you in Jupiter's Legacy, which will be released on Netflix very soon, and the series adaptation of your first book, So Much I Want to Tell You, Letters to My Little Sister. Thank you, Anna, so much for joining us. We're excited to be speaking with you.
Thanks so much for having me.
I think it's really, it's a given on those crazy days with everything that's unfolding in the United States. I think the world is sharply watching everything that's happening in the United States. So maybe you can share with us a little bit how you're feeling at the moment with everything that's happening.
Yeah, I think everyone in our nation is outraged that our government is using militarization to control peaceful protesters. I don't understand how it's so controversial to want everyone to have equal rights and to ask our police to stop brutalizing, Black people in our country. It's been really heartening to see everyone kind of come together for these protests, and because enough is enough. And so there's several fights going on right now. There's within the LAPD to have Chief Michael Moore fired because 600 African-American men and women have died under his watch. And there have been no prosecutions and no justice for those men and women who have died. And then we're also asking for police reform in general in our country. The police do not need military weapons. They take up 54% of the Los Angeles budget. And time again, we've seen through scientific studies and data that when you give police military weapons, they are going to become more violent. So right now, I think everyone's going through all of the emotions.
Yeah.
Today, I'm feeling really inspired and motivated by the citizens of my country who are standing up for African-American citizens.
Yeah, it's really inspiring to watch so many artists and especially comedians. As a fellow comedian, I'm telling you this here on sensitive issues, political issues. As a comedian, sometimes I feel very alone when I'm speaking up about, Palestinian issues or political sensitive issues. And I wanted to ask you, how do you feel as a comedian, as a creator who's supposed to be entertaining people and making people laugh on times like this? How does it feel to create right now in the midst of everything?
Honestly, creation right now feels like more of an escape, whereas I feel like for a lot of us, normally we're very caught up with, career trajectory and longevity and trying to understand how to reach a bigger audience, like a lot of trivial stuff in comparison to what is happening now. But I do think, everything is politics, down to our freedom of speech to even talk about politics.
Yeah.
And so I believe everyone is pulling their resources together to try to figure out how can we make more meaningful entertainment that is also educational and diversified, and how do we move forward in this state of not only like a post-pandemic world, well, not even post yet, we're still in the middle of it, but also a world in which we're not going to stand for the kinds of violence that's happening today. And I think several years down the line, it'll be very interesting to see the kinds of television and film that are going to come from this.
Yeah, our industry has been hit hard by, recently by everything that's happening. How do we get out of this? How do you, create, as you said, without, damaging, the fact that we need to make a living and we need to continue creating?
Whew, that's a tall order. I think the United States has kind of just given up and been like, fine, we're going to reopen everything and
Right.
we'll see what happens. But I think as far as the entertainment industry, I have heard that there's going to be some changes to how we normally do things. Like, you know, the craft table with all the snacks on it that you can walk by is no longer going to be a thing. Everything has to be individually wrapped. I heard there's going to be like a plastic partition they put between actors and crew up until we film. So I'm very curious. I think insurance companies are going to dictate what's acceptable forward, but I'm very curious to see how it changes.
In times like these, when, you know, the emotions are high and you want to speak up about the issues you care about, do you feel like because we are navigating, you know, because we use humor to raise awareness and because we're navigating, you know, sensitive spaces, do you find it sometimes that you are, I don't want to say censoring yourself, but how do you decide, you know, how you measure your words, what you're going to say? How, you know, what's the process like when the emotions are high around sensitive political issues?
Well, I think there is something to be said. Comedy is an interesting space, right? Because a lot of the times with comedy, you're trying to find an angle that's funny, and in the meantime, your joke just may be incredibly insensitive while you're looking for that angle. And if people just hear the insensitive version and not the finalized funny version, they may look at you as like a bigot or someone who's ignorant, or, you know, your comedy and your intention isn't quite coming across. I feel like in these times, there's no excuse to not try to be sensitive, because comedy is funniest when it's punching up, not down. And I think when people try to make fun of those less fortunate than us, or whomever you are, it's just not funny. Like, we don't find that amusing anymore. I think as a people, we're all coming into a higher sort of consciousness and understanding and empathy, and those kinds of cheap shots don't work. So, I mean, everyone is going to make a mistake eventually. But I think for me, it's being very careful about my words, trying to put a lot of thought into what is it that I'm saying? How is this going to be construed? And yes, that's extra work on my part, but as entertainers, that's also a responsibility.
You know, the things that you've been vocal about, and you know, the way you're using your platforms is, I think what is really, you know, sets an example for me also, is that you're really using storytelling, and also, you know, real examples from your life. And it seems like fundamentally you believe that through telling these stories you can make a difference. Do you think that's accurate? Do you find storytelling, you know, is it a way to spread hope? How do you measure this hope? What is your hope that by being personal about your stories, you are impacting other young people's lives?
Well, studies have shown that the kind of content you consume growing up and as a teenager completely shapes your life. So it determines your hobbies, your career, whether or not you get married, what your interests are. And a lot of these studies have pointed to the power of representation. For me, I feel like the most I can do is try to change people's minds about things that might be quite closed. So I'm very passionate about pro-choice movement. And so I made a short film called Take Your Birth Control, which is about how I got pregnant as like a 19, 20-year-old who was really stupid and ignorant about sex because I didn't have great sex education in Hawaii. And so I was able to use that experience to channel and make myself a sympathetic character that people could actually understand, for, you know, and it was mostly aimed at people who are pro-life, because I myself was very judgmental against abortions growing up, because that's what the Christian church told me to believe, that it was murder. But when you're in that position and you have to face the responsibility of potentially caring for someone's life for 18 years, some of us are just not well equipped to do that. And, you know, we've seen in countries where abortion is legalized, crime rates go down because there's more wanted children who are not being neglected or sort of, you know, abused, frankly. And so in that short film, I was able to change a lot of pro-life minds who are like, oh, actually, I've watched you for years, and now this experience makes me understand why some people have to make this decision. So I think with entertainment, it's incredibly important that the more personal you can be, oddly enough, the more universal it is, and talking about the things that maybe other people don't experience, so they can try to broaden their own sense of compassion.
Yeah. You know, there are a lot of frightening numbers about this period, you know, coming in about people's mental health, you know, situation. And you've done so much work raising awareness around these issues, specifically on issues around suicide. what are the kind of messages that you can tell, you know, young people, people around the world now who are listening to you, how we can, you know, who are coping with mental health issues right now in the middle of the craziness that's going on with this pandemic and other crises around the world, also maybe especially in the United States? What are some of the things that people can do to cope with what's happening now?
Yeah, I think it's everyone's mental health is quite precarious because not only are we now isolated from our support systems because of the pandemic and quarantine, but now we're also dealing with just the complete,
Craziness.
yeah, the unraveling of our nation anyway. Um,
Yeah.
I think I've found the most important thing that's helped my mental health during this time is giving myself permission to unplug from the news. You know, because there's also this sense now where we're exposed to more trauma in 24 hours than a person in the 1700s was exposed to in their entire lifetime because of the internet, because of the news cycle, because of sensationalism. And sometimes it's really important not to overstimulate yourself with that much terrible news. It has an effect on you. You get compassion fatigue. You start becoming stressed out. You feel like you're not doing enough as a single human being. And so for me, it's being like, okay, today I know that my mental health needs a break from that. I'm only going to consume content that is going to replenish the well so that I can show up tomorrow and continue fighting for all of the justice that needs to happen.
You know, I'm actually a COVID-19 survivor. I had the virus,
Oh my
and
God.
yeah, and I was quarantined in a Corona hotel in Jerusalem. They had patients together in a hotel, and
Uh-huh.
we were able to hug and to be with other people who are sick.
Uh-huh.
And you know, and while I was in the hotel, I was in touch with people who were alone, you know, dealing with this, and I think that it helped my mental state, just being around other people. We were supporting each other, and
Yeah.
we were, you know, Jews, Arabs, Palestinians, religious people, secular people, and in some crazy way, the fact that we're all sick brought us together. And you know,
Yeah.
watching what's happening now in the United States, it really breaks my heart, because I saw a glimpse of hope when I was around only sick people who are trying to help each other. And
Yeah.
when and I think, as you know, we're in such an extreme situation that I think an opportunity to do something good and positive in the United States is just ruined by such crazy irresponsible leadership. It's really heartbreaking to see, and people have to deal with so much. I mean, we
Yeah.
learned today that the George Floyd, God bless his soul, he had the virus.
Yeah.
And it really breaks the heart to think that he was fighting you know, this health pandemic, and the biggest pandemic, you know, racism got him. People are dealing with so much. It's really it's really important what you are doing. Thank you for what you're doing.
Of course. And I'm so sorry that you were sick, but I'm so glad that you're healed. That's so scary.
Yeah, now I'm much better. I caught it on the way from the US, on the way back home. I was working on a comedy show in the US. I was supposed to start a tour, and then
I what
change of
what a great opportunity though. I mean, like to be sick, like all the people who are sick who are completely alone. I can't imagine. Like at least like the fact that you had a support system around you seems like very, I mean, not fortunate, but in your
yeah.
unfortunate circumstances, it seems very lucky.
It was a very ironic situation that because we're sick, we're actually able to be together. And I've been, you know, an activist my whole life, and my comedy is based on the fact that we don't get along here, you know, Palestinians, Jews, and so suddenly this, like, you know, this pandemic, I saw a glimpse of us getting along because we have this external threat. It's been a roller coaster and a crazy journey. And you know, I mean, I think that in a lot of ways we are very connected, and even though I'm not in the United States, I'm watching you with admiration, seeing celebrities, seeing comedians speaking up without fear for your job, without fear, you know, for the consequences. I wish that we can learn from you more. Really, it's really amazing.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy how it takes like an external threat to really unite people. I always joke that like racism isn't going to end until we have aliens, around, because
Right.
then it's like, oh, we're actually the same. That thing though.
Yeah. Yeah. In the middle of this craziness, how are you dividing your time between the kind of public work that you need to do now as someone who's vocal around these issues, and how are you keeping time for yourself and making sure that you're okay, and also continuing to write on your craft and your art and create?
Yeah. Well, I'm very fortunate in that I've usually worked from home anyway, and that I had a father who really instilled routine. He was always like, routine is what's going to save you. So when quarantine hit, I was like, okay, how can I make my life as routine as possible to have some semblance of normalcy? Because when you're cut off from, your core support system, when you can't see your parents, when you can't hug people, they say loneliness is as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And I was like, okay, this is what we're up against, like extreme loneliness. And then now we also, on top of our pandemic, have a giant movement going on. So for me, it's been, making sure that I'm exercising within my home for like really happy endorphin chemicals, making sure that I'm eating healthy, doing what I need to do to support my body, because I know my mental health is going to suffer.
Right.
So making sure I get enough sleep, taking it easy, listening. I also am still going to therapy on FaceTime, trying to make everything feel as normal as possible. And, all of these Zoom things have become such an integral part of our life that now my friends are throwing dance parties over Zoom. Costume parties to try to make it a fun, normal experience. So now I have something to look forward to on a Friday night. But some days you do get to like 1 o'clock and you're like, I feel like this day is awful and I'm going to start drinking right now and I'm going to throw everything out the window. And I think the new self-care is kind of no self-care, in the sense of really listening to what you need and allowing yourself to have that. So I don't know is good advice, but some days I'm just like, I'm done with today. I'm going to turn off all my devices and just like read a book.
What do you think this this burst of like collective effort and this movement now, how do you think it's going to influence where young people are right now, that basically our whole lives have been canceled?
Yeah.
And basically it's a cancellation festival of our lives.
My friend sent me something this morning that is incredibly that I thought was beautiful. So it's from Leslie Dwight, and it says, what if 2020 isn't canceled? What if this is the year that we've been waiting for? A year so uncomfortable, so painful, so scary, so raw, that it finally forces us to grow. A year that screams so loud, finally awakening us from our ignorant slumber. A year we finally accept the need for change, declare change, work for change, become the change. A year that we finally band together instead of pushing each other further apart. 2020 isn't canceled, but rather the most important year of them all. I was like, what beautiful perspective.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think like collectively, like not just as a nation, but globally as a people, I feel like we're going through some intense stuff and confronting exactly what is wrong in our respective like mindsets or our countries, or what systems are not working for us anymore. And so I've tried to look at this in the best way of like, yeah, change is uncomfortable and hard. And like these kinds of years are important to highlight what isn't working and what we need to change going forward.
For sure. Anna, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us. I really hope that you stay safe. I know there is also a lot of anxiety around going outside and being in the crowded places, and people are literally sacrificing, the possibility of getting sick so that you can be part of this movement. And I'm here overseas, thousands of miles away, watching it with a lot of admiration. Really, really.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate coming on here and getting to have a great discussion.
Thank you. And hopefully next time we're talking, it's on a more hopeful and optimistic note. Yeah. And hopefully I'll see you in maybe in a comedy show in the US when we can travel again.
When it's safe to come back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.